All right, guys. So diving on into chapter 1 of the BCS manual, or the first little PDF that I'm going to send you guys. We are looking at our introduction to behavior change. So, like I said, we are going to be going over 2 chapters today. You can see the notes are split into chapter 1, which is very short, and chapter 2, where we'll get into sort of the role of a coach and what what it really means to actually like coach clients and stuff. So, introducing things, right? We're going to talk about how obviously the number of fitness and wellness professionals has significantly increased over the years. We know that there are actually more trainers out there right now than there ever have been, and yet obesity is still on the rise. And so what we are starting to sort of kind of come together and realize, what a lot of employers are realizing, is that it's not always just about like having like a really good workout. And I say this all the time. Like, if you write the world's greatest workout and you give somebody the world's greatest diet plan, like I sat you down, I was like, this is the most effective workout program ever written in the history of mankind. And this diet right here is perfectly optimized for your body. It's going to help you reach your result. And I have this like big package of stuff and I give it to my client. I'm like, there you go. You got everything you need to succeed. If they don't do it, they're not going to succeed. They're not going to reach their goals. They're not going to have success. And that's really where we started to realize, like, we need to be a little better about actually coaching people. And that's where sort of the BCS manual kind of comes in, right? We've started to kind of realize that, like, it's not always about just having like a really effective workout. Sometimes it's about getting someone to do a workout. And like, I've actually said this before, like, I would almost rather have someone do like a 90% efficient workout, where they kind of goofed around for 10% of the time, 5 days a week, then I would have somebody give me their all once a week. I would definitely prefer that. I would take somebody who's consistent over somebody who's inconsistent any day. And employers are starting to realize this as well. They're starting to realize that like obesity has really negative influences and negative impacts on their workforce. They're 10 to 12%. Well, I guess healthy workers are 10 to 12% more productive than unhealthy workers. And so when we see those sort of obesity statistics, we need to have like tools in our tool belt to kind of combat that. And that's where the need for personal trainers is like, yeah, there are more personal trainers right now than there ever have been, but we need way more. We need more personal trainers than we've ever needed before, which is ironic and a little scary, to think about. But, like I said, obesity is on the rise. Cell phone usage and, modern technology and poor diet and stuff like that. They're going to keep inventing new versions of freaking chicken sandwiches. Popeyes led the revolution there. And, now more people are eating fast food. My roommate came home last night with, he had Taco Bell. And my other roommate was like talking about how Taco Bell is changing their business model right now, and they're going to redo all their restaurants, and they're going to switch to no indoor dining. It's just going to be drive-through only. And then they're going to have like 3 separate lanes for drive-through, because like apparently like 85% of their business or something like that last year was strictly drive-through. I'm sure some of that was COVID numbers, but that's a crazy like statistic. I mean, like, people, like, we don't even want to expend enough energy to get out of our car and walk 20 feet into a store anymore. We want to just stay in our car. Like, we are getting more sedentary, and every time the world progresses in that direction, we need more trainers. Like, it's there's a it's in, I think it's in the, I want to say this is in the first paragraph of your NASM textbook. I want, I could be wrong, but I think it's in the very, very, very first paragraph. And it's like increases in technology and stuff, and it's talking about how the more sedentary people are, the more we need trainers. there is a massive sort of growing need for us. Again, like the more progress we make, the more sedentary we are, and the worse that is for us. So we are going to be health educators. If you think about like what the role of a trainer is, right? Our job is not necessarily to do the work for our client. Like we're not grabbing our client's feet and making them do bicycle crunches, like we're not exercising for them. We're there to lead them, right? And so a health educator, right? What health educators are is they're specific roles within the health and wellness industry responsible for planning, responsible for programming, not only like exercise and nutrition plans, but also behavior change strategies for our clients, like changing your physical activity. That's a behavior change. Changing the way that you do diet. That's a behavior change. Even just like getting somebody to skip or to switch from like whole milk to skim milk, that does have like a positive impact because it's going to be lower in saturated fat, things like that. So we are talking, our job is to really like implement plans to kind of help our clients reach their goals, right? So like if you were to tell me something that you're working on right now, you and I could sit down and we could come up with like, targetable behaviors and targeted things that will help you reach those goals. So definitely, yeah, we are seeing increase in job opportunities related to like health education fields. There's more nutritionists out there, there's more trainers, right? So there's with the increase of healthcare costs, we're seeing a much greater awareness of people who are, starting to realize that these are preventable diseases. That's the thing, right? Like when you think about like the scope of things when it comes to like health and wellness and stuff, like let's talk about like an ankle sprain, right? Lateral ankle sprain. We've talked about this before, is the most common sports related injury. It's the number one injury that athletes sort of receive, right? And that's a non-contact injury. Like which really means like it shouldn't necessarily happen. Like your body's designed to be able to cut side to side and jog and sprint and do stuff. Now, if you step in a hole, that's totally a different thing, But like you'll see people who they'll be walking and then they'll just take a wrong step and they'll land on the side of their foot and then it'll roll further and that overstretches that lateral ligament and tears it, right? And it's like, why did you step here instead of stepping with like a flat foot? Or why did you step, like this? Well, because like we spend the rest of our day, in like these awkward postures or elevated shoes, things where we don't have proprioception and touching the ground. And so like this is a completely preventable thing through, being an active physical person. But because we're not, we experience these injuries, like we experience this like breakdown of this soft tissue that is our body, and so like the same thing is true of like diet and stuff. And you see somebody get like cholesterol problems, and don't get me wrong, like some of that is genetic. Like we've looked at it, guys, like if you, this is what's kind of a bummer. This is why your doctor will always ask you if your family has a history of heart disease. One of the bummers is that like some people just bind to bad cholesterol more effectively, and bad cholesterol just kind of stays in their blood like longer than it really should compared with like other individuals. Everybody's a little bit different when it comes to that kind of stuff. So there's definitely some genetics at play there. But if you think about like what high cholesterol is, it often comes from like a poor diet, and again, like that's a behavior change. That's something that's like, well, we need to change it. It's like, I know I need to. And it's like, that's, by the way, at some point, I'm probably going to go off on a rant on this. I hate it when people say, I know. That's my least favorite response to me confronting them about like trying to be better. They're like, I know I do. I know I need to do this. It's like, if you did know, then you would be taking steps to prevent it. Or knowing does not matter, then so don't say it. Like, I don't want to hear I know. I want to hear, okay, I'm gonna be better. This is where like I get a little prickly when it comes to coaching and stuff. That is my least favorite response. The guy we booted out of here recently, out of our house, like I shared a bathroom with him. I was like, hey man, like I need you to like, do X, Y, and Z. He's like, I know I do, I just forget. And I'm like, well then don't just forget. Like take steps to make sure you don't. I will put it on the wall if I need to. So anyway, there's definitely a need for us, right? There's a need for us to kind of have those tough conversations with people, to have that, hush. I know, to have that confrontational thing. That's what a health educator is. It's like, these are destructive habits that are holding you back. So we need to be able to translate fitness lessons into actions, right? And that's one of the biggest things that we are going to do, right? So our job is to establish like healthy lifestyles for people. Be like, hey, like let's recognize that like this is something that's holding you back. Let's recognize that like, when somebody complains about like obesity and they're just like, well, I just, I've always struggled with my weight and like this and that. And it's like, well, what's your activity look like? It's like, well, I don't really like working out. I don't really like being physically active. So I guess I'm just never going to lose weight because I don't enjoy working out enough. And it's like, well, then we just need to find something that you do enjoy. Like if there's a sport that you like to play, a physical, like something that's like physically active, let's figure it out, right? And then we can figure out like a healthy lifestyle that's beneficial for you. Even if it's like photography, which is a pretty, not highly intense physical activity, but if you walk places to take photos of them and go on like nature walks and things like that, it doesn't have to be hiking. Like that's pairing something that you are likely to do with something that you're unlikely to do, and it will have very positive benefits for your clients. So there's a lot of tools that we're going to talk about in this course. Over the next 8 days, we're going to be talking about several different things. One of them is cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy, also commonly referred to as CBT, is behavior change strategies that focus on your client's thoughts, focus on your client's emotions, and helping like retool those things. So if you have a negative thought, how do we retool that into something more constructive and something that's more positive? We'll also talk about social cognitive theory, which we're going to help our clients with strategies that will use different social pressures to enhance your behavior change. We actually use peer pressure in sort of a positive way here. It's not like a necessarily like, hey, come on, all the cool kids are doing it. Something like that, but it's like, hey, like, people are relying on you. You got to do this. These people care about you. They're here to support you. Like, let's do this for you and let's do this for them. So that'll be kind of a fun one. We will also be talking about like visualization or imagery, as it's sometimes commonly referred to as. These are strategies that focus on using imagery to imagine specific scenarios. So like, if you have a client who's like really worried about this is a very common thing amongst like hyper obese clients, clients who are like morbidly obese, who are really self-conscious about how they look. Sometimes they feel like they don't belong in the gym, which to me is like the most tragic thought in the world. But they're just like, no, I'm afraid to go into the gym because I think I'm going to be judged by everybody in there, and I'm just really nervous to go on the weight floor. And so like helping them sort of like visualize that. I mean, like, all right, close your eyes. I want you to picture the last time you were on the gym floor. Look around. Is anybody looking at you? Like not really. Everybody's focused on themselves. So like that visualization can kind of help them see like a more realistic viewpoint on things. Goal setting, we're definitely going to use SMART goals. That's a really, really big one. The SMART system is just very effective at helping us sort of realize whether or not our goal is going to be easy to achieve or not. But there's other methods of goal setting as well. Like I really like to use a blend of long and short-term goals simultaneously. Long-term goal keeps you focused on something. Short-term goals are providing you feedback to let you know if you're on the way. I set a long-term goal this year to try to save somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000 before January of next year, so that I can buy like my first investment property. And short-term goals are that I need to put $1,000, aside in the stock market every month consistently. And I have to be able to track whether or not that's actually been happening. And that is where, goals are very, 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 helpful for that. It's like, let's say in February, I wasn't able to make that quota. Do I need to adjust my long-term goal? So now having a blend of those two things is a very effective strategy to keep you on pace, when it comes to behavior, there's sort of three main elements that are sort of making up like a healthy like lifestyle, like a healthy, effective, I guess, adult, is we're looking at nutrition as a big part of that. We want to make sure that we eat healthy in order to, you are what you eat, right? That is actually quite true. I mean, I think after, talking about nutrition like we have over the last few weeks, I think that becomes like pretty obvious, right? Like you're made up of proteins, fats, and carbs. And so like healthy nutrition is going to be really important there. And then fitness is obviously a big one. We know that like we need to challenge our body in order to keep it strong and to signal to our body that it should stick around, signal to our immune system that our body needs to stay strong. And then there's behavior change. There's the mental aspect. It's like your body, your nutrition, and your brain, your mind, your emotions. Your soul, if you will. These are the three things that really are absolutely huge, right? Again, if you come up with like a healthy nutrition plan and come up with a healthy fitness plan, but you don't ever do it, it's not going to work, and if you're just doing like diet and you're really good at sticking to that, but you're not so good at sticking to the fitness, that's not going to work very well either. And even if like your fitness and your nutrition is good, but you're just not consistent, that's not going to be great. Or if you work out regularly, but you eat poorly, that's not going to be good either. So these definitely all kind of feed into one another. So as a fitness professional, our job is to use psychological principles to help our clients, facilitate positive change. And this is where we're going to use this huge term right here. This is super important. We are applying guided self-help, right? Guided self-help. We are not telling our clients what to do. We are educating them on what is out there in terms of positive choices. But it's one of those things where like, yeah, we are trying to like influence our clients in positive ways, and we're trying to challenge them, my roommate is really great at using this term. He's terrific at it. Where sometimes like someone will say something and then he will go, I hear you, but I want to challenge you. And then he'll say something else. Terrific at that. And like I have straight up stolen that from him as many times as I can, where someone's like, oh, I'm just so busy lately, I can't get this done and this done and this done. And it's like, all right, I hear that, but I want to challenge you to maybe look at your life and examine like where, you can maybe find that time, because like, yeah, sometimes, motivation is not enough, so that'll be a really kind of fun thing to look at. We want to have this like, when it comes to guided self-help, we want to be supportive. We want to be positive. That's going to be absolutely huge. I know that sometimes there's that tough love approach. And hey, that is a thing that you can absolutely use. It is a tool in your tool belt, but it is not your only tool. So, but you can be very like tough. And you can be very realistic with your clients while still always being supportive and always being positive. It's got to come from a place of, wanting success, not just from a place of yelling, I guess. I don't know. So when we are looking at this, we do have a strict code of professionalism and a code of ethics to focus on, and we do have our scope of practice. Again, guys, in the same way that we are not dietitians, therefore we are not allowed to give our clients specific meal plans that are catered to them. We can give them example healthy meal plans. We cannot tell our clients specifically what to eat. We cannot prescribe food. We cannot prescribe treatment for our clients either. We are not therapists. That's where you got to remember, it's self-help, right? Underline it, put it in red, whatever. It's self-help. That's the big thing here. Your client is the one who's really making this choice, and so that relies on a professional client relationship that facilitates change by giving the client the knowledge, giving the client the support that they need in order to create this positive change, but you are not doing it for them. So we are going to work with sometimes healthy professionals, like I've my clients, a couple times. This doesn't happen very often, but I've had clients like, when I'm like sitting there, like working on like goal setting and stuff, I've had, sort of brief communication with You know, like if they have like a therapist that they're working with regularly and stuff, and that way like we can get in sync. You know, but in general, we just need to be skilled in exercise, nutrition, behavior change, and coaching, right? That is all very general. We're not necessarily applying like psychological treatment. We're not delving into our client's past to dig anything up and see if it like fixes something in the future or helps them cope. That's definitely not the kind of thing that we are absolutely doing. That is a healthcare professional's, role. That is a therapist, a psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever, counselor. Our job is really to focus on the future, right? Our job is really to focus on, what's in front of our client and how we can help them steer themselves to those healthy outcomes that they want to achieve. So, similar to like what these roles that are out there are, you might call yourself like a life coach or a behavior modification specialist, a coach, a personal consult, or a health educator. Like these are all like terms that you might use in this industry, right? These are all terms that may come up, and maybe that's where you see yourself. What's up, Gabriel?
Hey, what's up, man?
It's not necessarily going to be always like, hey, I'm a personal trainer. Maybe you end up like calling yourself like a health educator, and you work a little bit in nutrition and a little bit in you're a coach, right? And so, we are definitely focusing on like helping our clients with that guided self-help in the realm of nutrition and exercise. In the same way that like dietitians are absolutely, again, my friend Rebecca, she will absolutely tell people to exercise and get more physically active in order to help with the nutrition side of things. And she'll also talk about their habits and SMART goals and long-term goals and short-term goals and things like that. Is she a therapist? No. Is she a personal trainer? No, but she's allowed to talk about those things as long as that person is, making those choices themselves. Same thing with us, right? We are absolutely allowed to talk about nutrition. We're absolutely allowed to talk about like, behavior change. We are doing it from the role of education and guiding our clients there, right? So you can be holding the steering wheel, but your client has to push on the gas. And this is great, guys. Like what's great about this, and this is where Nassim's going to kind of wrap this up here. This is a good way for you to kind of expand your offerings beyond traditional personal training. These are ways for you to kind of enhance your services and like what you are offering to your clients. Sometimes like, if there's somebody who comes to the gym and they're going to sign up for a new gym membership and they need to decide between the trainer that's really good on the gym floor and the trainer that's really good on the gym floor, but also really good at coaching, they're going to go with the one that knows how to coach as well, right? And so that is definitely, sort of where we are coming from here. We'll talk about client testimonials and stuff like that later. But that can be a really good thing too, because like, people will definitely want to talk about this. And then like, yeah, behavior change coaching and then virtual coaching, right? Especially in this version of the world, like we are living in freaking COVID land now. Virtual coaching is great. Like there's a couple of my clients that I meet with strictly virtually now. I picked up a new client that my friend Rebecca actually gave me. From where she lives. She lives in New Jersey, and so like we meet on the phone and like I give her different like target goals to hit each week and check in to see how she's doing about like her long-term goals and stuff, and then like build her new workouts and things like that she can kind of stick to. So that gives you more flexibility, gives you more opportunity. Nassim always tries to justify in the first chapter, like why, because people like usually purchase these packages, right? They always try to justify why you're reading all this stuff in the first chapter. So yeah, there are a lot of business opportunities. This is a way for you to enhance your paycheck. We'll leave it at that. So we will focus on assessing our clients very similarly to the way that we assess clients physically, so that we can learn about their posture, or the way that we assess our clients when it comes to nutrition, so that we can learn about their diets. Well, we're also going to assess their lifestyles and see, whether or not their lifestyle is conducive to what their goals are. So there's going to be two main things that you're going to see that we're going to tie back to every time we talk about like a different tool in your tool belt throughout this course. We're going to be talking about number one, Prochaska's trans-theoretical model of change, which is super freaking hard to say. So that is the stages of change model, much easier. And that's focusing on like, that is having an understanding and focusing on, the fact that like the biggest mistake most people make, and I've said this before, and I will say this again. The biggest mistake that a lot of people think or people make is that everyone is ready for change. Even like individuals themselves, like, even people who are just like, oh, I'm ready to get on a new diet plan. I'm ready for this. I'm ready for this. I'm ready for this. And they may say that, but it's like, are you? I mean, are you really ready to like put in the work, the time, the effort to like do all these things? It's like, let's analyze your life. Like, where are you at when it comes to like this kind of thing? Where are you at when it comes to this kind of thing? Are you actually ready right now? And it's like, you know what? Now I probably need to get a little bit of infrastructure in place before I do this. That's okay. Right? We just need to be able to recognize where they actually are in the stages of change. Maybe they're contemplating still. They're thinking about it, right? But they're not ready to like really take the deep plunge yet, or maybe they are. Maybe they have made some specific changes. So our job is to keep them there, right? Our job is to make sure they don't relapse. So that's one. We're going to talk about the stages of change whenever we are looking at like our different coaching techniques. And then we are also going to look at what is called multimodal screening, which is an assessment method that is used to assess how an individual thinks and how they like behave, right? So we're going to break this down into what we call the basic id. And it's just an acronym. There's going to be a lot of acronyms in this course. That stands for behavior, which is like what your clients' like actions are. Affect, how they are affected by things like emotionally. Sensation, which is very similar to affect, but that is how someone is affected by things physically. Imagery, what type of imagery somebody like conjures up, are they very negative images or very positive images? Cognition, about how people think. Are they a little bit more logical? Are they a little bit more emotional? Interpersonal relationships. So like what kind of support systems does somebody have? And then any drugs and or like just natural biology that someone has. So we do want to know a little bit about like, if your client is on some type of like medication that has like certain effects, or, certain types of a diet that might have certain effects, like the biology of, how things could be affecting them. Are they getting enough sleep? That's actually a part of that. So no summary slides. So that is probably because just this first chapter is so short. So that is our first chapter, sort of an introduction. That is what we're going to be going over over the next 8 days. Not necessarily a ton of nuggets to pull out of there just yet, but any questions so far, guys?
So far, so good.
All right, love it. We got a bunch of new, Phil Jackson's brewing here on this Zoom call. All right. I've never been like, this is going to be so controversial to say, like in a class where I'm working in Los Angeles. I'm not exactly like the biggest Lakers fan in the world. I was like a Sonics fan, but then I also like when Ray Allen like left to go to the Celtics, I kind of became like a Celtics fan. But like, Phil Jackson is one of the most legendary coaches of all time. That guy was a freaking genius. That was the wrong folder, me. There we go. All right. So speaking of legendary coaches, let's take a look at, how to coach and how to communicate with our clients. So what is a freaking coach? When we say that, like, what do we mean, right? So coaching, very integral part, that does involve, is sort of a part of several other like disciplines. Like medical professionals can be a coach sometimes, I don't feel like they're particularly great at it all the time. Like, oftentimes a doctor will say, here, take 2 of these, call me in the morning. And then like, they're like, hey, you got to work on your cholesterol. And the next time they see this person, hey, you got to work on your cholesterol. It's like they keep saying the same things over and over again. But then like they never really kind of get the results that they sort of want their patient to achieve. And that's because like they need to be coaching their client, you know. You can tell everybody knows what to do. Like I'm kind of amazed by this, you know. I'm amazed that smoking is still around. You know, like to me, that's kind of crazy because like we know, yeah, the information's out there. Everyone knows that like smoking is bad for you and is completely irredeemable. There's nothing good about it. It has zero positive qualities. And yet people still do it because there's this part of our brain that goes, wow, it's bad for everybody else. Probably not that bad for me. You know, like there's this sort of like approach that a lot of people have. Our job as a coach is to help people recognize that like, look, you're special in a lot of ways, but not in this way. You know, like smoking is always bad. You know, helping people kind of come to that realization. So medical professionals, social workers are absolutely coaches sometimes. Teachers, you know, like I'm here to be a coach for you guys when you need something, you know. I know some of you guys have had like, you know, personal things that sometimes get in the way of school. Absolutely. You know, it's not like you're living like a life. Like, you know, this is adult school. This isn't high school. You know, this isn't the one thing you can focus on. This is, you know, a piece of a very complicated life, you know. And so with that, like we get it. And so like, you know, I want to be here to kind of help you guys in whatever, you know, tools are going to be most effective. You know, to help you kind of reach your goals and kind of get through this. So when you guys need help, you know, reach out to me. Individual counselors, therapists, physical therapists, they're absolutely coaches. Alternative therapies, yeah, even the you know, sort of like Eastern medicine approach that isn't necessarily always the most like you know, sort of medical based, you know, can absolutely benefit from like effective coaching, you know, like placebo effect, you know, can even be like very effective. And then there's us, fitness and wellness professionals. Absolutely, you know, getting people to more effectively exercise. And so the biggest benefit of coaching is that it is encouraging your client to take control, to take ownership of the process, you know, to take ownership of, you know, the outcomes and stuff, take the good with the bad and recognize that like, you know, they are at sort of the control of everything, right? So here's like one of my favorite sort of quotes here that I always like to tell people. You know, coaching is focusing on getting your client to overcome the outcomes, right? You guys know that I love the phrase form, you know, or function follows form, right? Like if something looks a certain way, then it will act a certain way. Well, here's something that you should, you know, when you hear it, to some people on this call, this may be very, very obvious, but maybe to others, this is something you need to hear. Your life is perfectly designed right now to give you the results that you are currently receiving. So whatever type of results you are like receiving in your life right now, if you're not happy with those results, if you're not happy with how much money you're making, or if you're not happy with, you know, your relationships or anything, what we need to all understand what is true, you know, and I'm not judging any of this, but what is absolutely capital T true is that your life is designed to give you those results right now. Your life is set up in a way that like you're going to continue making that, you know, you have a job where you make this much money. Your life is designed that way, right? Maybe you didn't necessarily design it yourself, you know, like some people struggle with their weight. Yeah, maybe they were dealt a frustrating hand when it comes to metabolism. You know, maybe they live in an area where it's not very easy for them to move. But no matter what, we do know that all the things around them are designed to give them. And that sounds sometimes like it could be a negative thing, right? Like, but to me, that's the most positive thing in the world. That's so exciting to hear. When you're like, oh, if my life is designed in a way that I'm gonna, you know, that means that like if I design my life differently, if I change certain variables in my life, I will get different results. Well, I want to be, you know, richer than Jeff Bezos. Great. Design your life in such a way that's going to do that, you know? Now the challenge is going to be to figure out like, you know, what you do need to change and like how to change it and what sort of things to do. Bezos was, you know, a poor guy running a website out of his garage at one point. And, you know, he has had success because He worked really hard in the beginning and then had a concept that worked really well, and then he worked people to death. And that is a very effective way to become very, very wealthy. I'm not judging whether or not that's good or bad. Maybe I am a little bit, but regardless, it is a design that will result in a very effective, monetary way of living. You want to change your weight status. Well, then you need to change your lifestyle to match that, right? And so that's where coaching comes in. Our job is to help our clients come up with strategies to make these changes that I'm talking about. That's why this is the behavior change specialist class. So a coach, what coaching is, it is a connection between two individuals in which a coach, primarily through asking questions, encourages the client to make changes, make the changes that client desires. So we want to ask our clients, like, what is it that you really want? Like, what is it that you're trying to achieve? And what do you think is going to be realistic to help you get there? And then they're like, well, I want to look this way, or I want to perform this way. And it's like, okay, great. So what needs to happen? It's like, I want to be a better athlete. Okay, great. You want to be a better athlete. What do you need to do to be a better athlete? It's like, well, I probably need to hit the gym multiple times per week. I need to focus on this specific type of training. I need to improve my vert, improve my takeoff speed, all these different maybe aspects of whatever their sport is. And it's like, okay, great. So let's commit, let's say how many times a week are we going to work out? And it's like, how many times a week do you work right now? And it's like, I'll go to the gym whenever I can. I probably average 1 or 2 times a week. And it's like, all right, well, are you getting more athletic at 1 or 2 times a week? And they're like, oh, definitely not. And then it's like, okay, so we can recognize that 1 to 2 times a week is not enough for you to get where you want to be, right? How many times a week do you think you could commit to consistently coming and seeing this improvement? It's like, well, I could probably commit maybe 4 or 5 times per week. Great. Yeah, 4 or 5 times a week. I think that is going to be a really effective way to do this. Now, when you're here, let's focus on breaking this down into speed workouts and agility workouts and quickness, and break it down into improving your power output. Those are the things that are going to kind of help. So as a coach, you can see we broke it down. We asked a lot of different individual questions that helped our clients spitball ideas and throw at us. And then we were able to kind of maybe say maybe that's not most effective, but let's try this version. And we assist our client in generating possible solutions, right? So it involves monitoring our client's progress, right? So we're going to keep an eye on our client, and we're going to check in with them very, very regularly. Tracking things. This is why I always tell my clients, and I've told you guys this a million times, I am a huge fan of workout journals. Everybody in here, if you are lifting weights, everyone in this call right now, you should absolutely be using a weightlifting journal and make sure that you are tracking your weights and looking for improvements. Bae, we were just talking about this last night, right? I am on a big heavy lifting routine right now. And I checked my journal and was like, all right, this is how much weight I'm supposed to lift. And I threw that on the bar when I went to go try to do it. And sure enough, in a couple places, I was able to pick the weight up right where I left it 6 months ago. And in a couple other places, I lost about 10 pounds worth of strength. In the upper body. Shocker. But that's why workout journals are so effective. I'm going to be on an 8-week block here. And I was able to improve my strength by a massive percentage last time over 8 weeks. And I'm only picking up just behind where I was before. So hopefully I'll be able to get to a higher place at the end of this 8 weeks than I was last time, right? And that's why workout journals are so freaking effective. You're not spitballing at different weights every time. You're not trying to guess what your weight should be when you walk into the gym. You know what it should be. So writing progress down, tracking progress, that's where we come in. Sometimes people are not going to want to do this. That's okay. I will write your weights down. I will track with you, right? And then we're also going to encourage our client through coaching to take more ownership over their control over the process and over the outcomes, right? Make them understand that they are the captain at the helm, And so we are focusing on helping our clients sort of recognizes. Now, I will say coaching is focusing on current situations. We are focused on like where your client is right now and where they want to be. We are not diving into someone's past. Okay. Again, that is, you're starting to toe the line of like getting into like therapist territory. That is definitely not what we do. Our job is to focus on the present so that we can have an effective future. Okay. So that means that we are helping our clients suggest possible solutions to their problems and then encouraging them to stick to the path that they are choosing, right? And it's like, I want to be a healthier, more effective person. Great. Let's keep focusing on that. Next time you see them, how's the health coming? How's your effectiveness coming? How do you feel about how your life is improving lately? It's like, I've been a little frustrated lately. It's like, all right, what's been so frustrating? And it's like, well, this. Okay, great. Here's what we can try. Boop, 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 boop. We're focusing on the present so we can have a more effective future. Now, coaching. This is, if you forget everything I tell you today, the most important thing I can tell you is this right here. One of the biggest things that you need to have in order to be an effective coach is you need to have what is called an unconditional positive regard for your client. Now, when I say that, unconditional positive regard, that makes it sound as if you need to always be positive about your client and be like, no, it's okay, and let your client get away with everything. That is not what I'm saying. You don't just always need to be nice and fluffy, like with your client. What an unconditional positive regard is, we read the definition here. It is the positive expectation of the coach that the client has the capacity to grow and they have the capacity to find the answers that they need. That's what an unconditional positive regard is, right? It is not saying that it's like, no, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, you're 20 minutes late. It's fine. Yeah, you're being positive. You're being friendly, you're being nice, right? But there's a difference between being nice to someone and being good for them, right? I've said this before. I absolutely, you'll see this meme on like, your parents will post this up on Facebook and stuff. This stupid, you see these memes in like, in little like loopy fonts and stuff where it's like, your friend will bail you out of jail. A good friend will bail you out of jail, but a great friend will be sitting in the jail next to you. I've seen my parents and other people like, post this quote so many times. I hate that quote because like your best friend would have told you, hey, what you are doing is stupid. You should not be doing this, right? Like they'll have the hard conversation with you, like your opinion is destructive and not good for you. Like that is a good friend. It's not always about just being nice and saying, yeah, do what you want. No, it's about being like if your kid wants to place their hand on a hot stove, maybe don't let them do that. That's, it's like, yeah, you want to put your hand on the stove, go for it. I'm a cool bear. Yeah, go for it. No, of course not. You're going to do the thing that like keeps them from getting. That's what unconditional positive regard is. You need to have the belief that like your client has the capacity to change. You need to have the belief that they are going to succeed, that they are going to meet their goals, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's okay for them to do whatever, because maybe those things are not helping them reach those goals. So the way I like to summarize this, and this is how sort of my writing here, you must have the belief that your client is going to meet their goals. The second that that belief is lost, the power of you as a coach is also lost. You really need to make sure that like at any time you do believe that your client is going to reach their goals. So like, let's say you got a client who's trying to like cut down the fast food and they show up for their session on Monday morning. You train them once a week. And you show up for them Monday morning. It's like, hey, how'd it go this week? Did you have any fast food? It's like, yeah, I stopped by Carl's Jr. And it's like, all right, like that's not okay if we're going to meet our goals, right? What do we need to do to like change things up? And it's like, well, I could try this. I could try this. Great. Let's execute those target behaviors this week. Okay. I want you to try doing these things that we talked about. I'll see you on Monday. Right. Monday rolls around, you see them again. It's like, hey, how'd it go this weekend? It's like, oh, you know what? I was really good about, and skip the college junior, just like we said. But then, later on in the week, I got really swamped at work, didn't have time to kind of make my lunch. And on Friday, I went out to lunch, I went to McDonald's. It's like, all right, that's not okay. We got to make sure that we don't do that, right? But we can still get there. We just need to change like X, Y, and Z, right? You'll notice, like, yes, it's okay to be like, hey, that is not our target behavior. It's not helping you. We got to not do that. I'm not letting them off the hook, but I am still having this belief. It's like, we can still achieve our goals. That's the unconditional positive regard. You have to have the belief that if your client, you've been training your client for a year and they go to fast food every week for 52 weeks in a row, you, as the coach, have to have the belief that on week 53, they're going to change their mind. And I know that like all statistics point to the fact that like, they're going to still fall into those bad habits. But the minute that you start believing that your client is only ever going to fall back into those bad habits, you are going to lose all your power as a coach. You may not realize it. I may not feel that way. I may not feel like anything's changed, but you're going to start showing up for your sessions lackadaisical. You're going to lose the motivation, similar to maybe how they've lost the motivation. And that's something you want to always kind of be cautious of and be aware of and be able to pick up on, and do it in your own life too, guys. Have an unconditional positive regard for yourself, have the firm belief that you are going to reach your goals, because sometimes, it feels as if like, you're like, oh, I'm just never going to get there. Right. You need to have that belief. Without belief, motivation is not enough. Saying that you're going to do something is not enough. You have to believe that you're going to do it. And that's unconditional. It's the belief. Has anybody in here in this call right now, little class survey real quick, Derek, Gabriel, Bay, Thomas, has anybody watched the show Ted Lasso? Anybody watching Ted Lasso?
I've heard of him, but I haven't watched it. No.
Anybody else? No. Oh, okay, guys. I just watched the season 2 just came out. You've got to watch Ted Lasso. Get an Apple TV. It's Apple TV. Get Apple TV preview. Binge the whole thing in a week. Just knock out that first season. It is one of my favorite shows I think I've ever watched. The first episode's a little rough, but the rest of them are so good. And it's all about this American like college football coach who gets hired to coach soccer, European football, in the UK. And he has no idea what he's doing. He doesn't know anything about. There's this. It's so funny in the first press conference, like when he's like talking to the media, he's like, well, I may not know much about the sport that you call football, but I know that like anybody that I coach is going to go out there and they're going to play hard for all 4 quarters. And you can hear somebody in the background, they're like 2 halves. He's like, they're going to play hard for all 2 halves. He's like, and we're going to go out there and we're going to try to win or lose every single time. Right. And it's like, or tie. And he's like, ties. You guys got ties here? He's like, all right, well, we're going to try to win enough games to get to the playoffs. He's like, there are no playoffs. It's like, no playoffs. Why do you guys even have the sport? It's really, really, really funny. If you guys get a chance, I super recommend it. It is all about incredible coaching. And he says, he's got this great quote where he's like, I believe in belief. And I just love that quote. I believe in belief. That's the unconditional positive regard. So anyway, I could talk about this for 10 hours. It's my favorite freaking thing in the world to talk about. But
is it on Netflix, Brad?
No,
is it on Netflix?
It's Apple TV. It's Apple TV.
Apple TV.
Yeah,
okay.
this show right here. So if you're like a sports person or anything like that, I really just, you guys gotta watch this show. It's Jason Sudeikis, the guy from SNL. You might recognize him. But he is so good. Yeah, there we go. Oh, this is a thing right now. My buddy just posted this. Oh, I'm so upset that I didn't go get to do this. They open a pop-up down in Santa Monica, and in the show he makes these like really good biscuits. And you can go down to Santa Monica right now and get these little biscuits that say like, I believe in belief. And I didn't get down there and it's closed now, but like my buddy got some the other day. So anyway, go watch Ted Lasso, guys, especially in this class, in this course right now. I think it'll highly motivate you. I'm this tempted to freaking give out extra credit, but that would be a super quick way for me to get fired. So anyway, moving on. Watch Ted Lasso, but we're moving on. All right. So as a coach, here's how it's going to go. Things that you need to sort of be able to do, your competencies, if you will. We need to be able to establish a coaching agreement, which means that we need to have a very clear idea between you and the client of like what our boundaries are and things like that. Establish trust and rapport with your client. You're going to need to continually get your client to trust you and try to build as much support with them as you can. Demonstrate empathy. You need to be able to, as a coach, it's very important for you to be able to like convey that empathy and emotional support to your client. Give your client helpful examples. That's always going to be huge. Actively listen to your client. Absolutely big. We'll talk about how to do a little bit of active listening. Challenge your client's thinking. That is huge. And again, it's not always about saying yes to everything. Sometimes about saying no. Establish a very clear focus for your client and say like, these are our target behaviors. Provide options for those things. Like if you don't want to do this, maybe you can do this instead. And then always be able to ask the appropriate questions. So when I say establish a coaching agreement, what I mean is the most effective agreements that you can kind of sit down with your client, and it can be verbal, but oftentimes like get it in writing and it's even more effective. But like effective agreements set very clear boundaries of time, very clear boundaries of engagement and financial commitment. So even sitting down and saying like, all right, so we are going to set you up for 8 sessions at $50 a session. That's going to be $400 up front right now, and we're going to meet for 30 minutes once a week every Friday, right? And we're going to check in to see how your work is going. And what I'm going to do is, my role is I'm going to give you different things to try to do every single week. I'm going to set up like specific like goals for you, specific things. Like we're very clearly like I'm laying out the financial commitment, the time commitment. That's going to be an 8-week commitment, and I'm laying out like what my role is and what their role is. So that's the most important components of an agreement. Very clear start and end dates. What will be covered in the coaching agreement, right? The coaching process. Be like, my job is to kind of set you up, but like you have to be the one to pull the trigger on these things. We're going to work together to determine like what it is that you want to do, and I'm going to help you come up with strategies to achieve that. But I can't do it for you. You got to do this, right? So we're covering upfront before our client. We are managing their expectations. Financial arrangements, right? Whether they're paying upfront or, which by the way, make them pay upfront. Missed appointment policies, like, hey, like if I need at least 24 hours in advance notice. If you do not cancel on me with at least 24 hours notice, I will still be charging you for these sessions. And then what my responsibility is and what their responsibilities are, which we already kind of talked about. So this is an example of what I like to call managing expectations. For those of you who have been through classes with me, Derek and Gabriel, you guys haven't heard this just yet, but when we get together for fitness assessments and stuff, and your client's like walking through the door, I always like to say like, hey, what's up? My name is Brad. Like, here, we're doing this. Introduce myself, get them nice and comfy, and then I love to just take 1 minute to kind of go through what the next hour is going to look like. So we're going to start over the desk right here. I'm going to gather a little bit of information about your background and general medical history and stuff like that. And then we're going to move on to the gym floor where I'm going to gather some other like sort of hard data about things. And then I'm going to put you through like a little bit of a miniature workout that's really much more of an assessment because I want to see how you move and what your posture looks like. Sound good? Great. Let's get to work. That's managing their expectations. You're laying out, you're forecasting what's going to happen over the next amount of however long, right? That could be weeks, could be days, could be an hour. Now, that's going to be huge. You also want to make sure that you are always establishing trust and rapport with your clients. When I say establishing trust, when I say establishing rapport, what I mean is that you are reading your clients' general responses, their behaviors, and learning how to like connect with them. If they are like a big sports person, yeah, talk about like, any background that you have in sports. If they like, TV and movies, let's talk about that. Like have some fun with your client. The more fun you have with them, the more open you are and the better a communicator you are, the more they are going to trust you, right? That's what rapport is. It's the level of trust that one individual has in another. So there's a lot of things you can say, right? Like, telling your clients like, hey, like, you're a smart, capable person. What do we have to do to kind of get you to be where you want to be? How do we use these great qualities that you have? How do we use those brains? How do we use that capableness? We also want to be able to display empathy and emotional support to our clients. Like the best way to do that is through presence. Presence is an inner focused, showing outward signs of attention. So this is another example of like active listening, right? But like your body posture, not closing up, not being on your phone, things like that. Outward signs of attention, your posture, nodding, right? Empathetic statements like, oh, that sounds really hard. Or, oh, I get that, right? Those are the kind of things that can kind of bring you back to your client, and that can help you establish that rapport and help your client establish that trust. So like you guys have heard me say this a million times, this is one of my favorite phrases. I hear you, or I hear what you're saying. That's another version of that, right? I love to say like, hey, like I hear you, I get it. Absolutely. Or like, sometimes encouraging statements are also really helpful, right? Hey, you can do this. You got this. You have the ability to face this challenge. It's a little bit more wordy, but like, translates to you got this. Give your client helpful examples, right? Inspiring stories are always a really great way to do this. Like people love a good story. People love a good anecdote, but give them like a fun, inspiring story that maybe you've like experienced in your life, or, even just maybe it's like imagining, having them imagine, the healthy, effective like parts of their life and be like, hey, like, your storyline is not one of this. Your storyline is one of this, right? And like having them rewrite that. Like you are not the person who struggles. You are the person who succeeds, right? Like I said, active listening, we already kind of talked about this through like the idea of presence, but listening effectively is a huge skill. Making eye contact with your client, focusing on them completely. You want to make sure that like someone hears you. You want to make sure that someone thinks, my young, guys on this call, you're on a date and you want to make sure that like you are the person across the table from you is like feeling heard. Here's one of the best ways to do that. Ask them questions where you reframe exactly what it is that they just said to you. Repeat back to them what they said in a different way, or like your understanding of it. Like when someone's like, when you're explaining something to someone, or when someone's explaining something to you and you're like, yeah, right? Like that's very passive listening. I'm not saying you don't hear what they're saying, but like it's very passive. You want to actively listen to someone and you want to display to them that you hear what it is that they are saying. Try this. Be like, oh, so what you're saying is, and repeat back to them. But like repeat it back in your own words. That will help you make human connection with someone way faster. Trust me. That is the best way to actively listen. That is a tool that I've been using for years, thanks to my mom. My mom's a pretty good communicator, and she loves to talk. I definitely have like picked that up from her. It's something that has served me in my career as like a trainer for years, and sometimes it's great because like you could be wrong, you could be misinterpreting something. So you're saying is this, and it's like, nah, I'm not quite saying that. what I'm saying is this, and it's like, oh, gotcha, right? Like that can also be, that's how things don't get miscommunicated. So active listening is really big here. I do have a really fun video to show you about like active listening, and here is an example of miscommunication. Let me see if I can remember. All right. I freaking love this. Let's see, share sound. Here's an example of active listening gone wrong.
Das hier ist mein Sektor. Das hier ist das wichtigste Gerät des Küstenwächters. Das Gerät und das Gerät. Überlebensradar.
Mayday, Mayday. Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you... Over. We are sinking. We are sinking.
Hello? This is the German Coast Guard.
We are sinking. We're sinking.
What are you thinking about?
What are you thinking about? Anyway, miscommunication sometimes happens. So actively asking questions can help clarify things. I love that commercial. That commercial's so old. You see how blown up
Yeah, I remember seeing that. That's hilarious. That's
yeah.
funny.
Oh my god. It's like it's so pixel. It's so old, but yeah, I just love it so much. So ask questions, right? Ask those active listening questions. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. Listen attentively, obviously, like make eye contact, nod if you need to, right? Take notes. Sometimes that's a version of active listening. Focus completely on your client. Do not pull your phone out. Do not text message or email while you're listening to your client. That's not actively listening. Filter out any of the internal chatter. This is one that's like sometimes really challenging. I know I struggle with this because I've got like a million voices in my head at any given time. There's always a song running in the background, like, but like learning how to filter out that chatter and just kind of like hear the words that your client is saying. Ask probing questions, like I said, asking questions like, how did that make you feel? Or like, did that make you feel bad or did that make you feel good? Like, rather than just simple yes or no questions. Learn how to hold your silences. Like active listening does involve listening. Don't interrupt your client constantly. Don't chat with them and interrupt what they are saying. And then use their language. Like I said, you want to repeat back what they said to you. Using their language, similar language, is a really good way to kind of build that rapport. My mom, again, very effective communicator, my mother. When I was a kid, she'd be yelling at me for any various reasons of stuff that I did wrong, which was constant. And she'd be like, she's like, hey, you're not hearing me. And I would say, I'm listening. And I'd repeat back exactly. You said, bup, 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 bup. And I'd repeat it back. And she'd be like, yeah, you listened to me. You didn't hear me. And I'd be like, ugh. Because I would like say the words and I would know the words. But like, she's right. I wasn't like, actually absorbing those words. The woman was always right. So sometimes that's a part of active listening. Oh gosh, darn it. So also challenge your client's thinking sometimes. This is a big part of coaching as well, guys. Communicating like a positive attitude with your client, but learning how to like, challenge their thinking. Sometimes people get in this mindset of like, oh, I'll never be able to do this. I'll never be able to do that. And it's like, no, we need to reframe that. Reframing is a really effective tool that you have at your disposal. It's the process of asking questions to help your client see things in a much more fair, much more objective light, right? So it leads to a fuller, fairer understanding of things. When someone says like, oh, I'm just not able to do this. I'm not able to, I'm ineffective. I'm not good at like reaching my goals. I'm not good at this. I'm not good at that. Right. And it's like, well, okay. Like, I don't believe that that's true. What are you good at? And it's like, well, I'm good at this. And it's like, okay. Do you see how that could possibly translate to your fitness or your health? Right. Like, that's reframing, like getting someone to say like, hey, like maybe, yeah, let's say I'm not good at this right now, but I'm going to be good at it later, right? So like I'm useless at connecting with people. That's a very negative thing that someone would say. But then say something like, well, is that true? I mean, like, do you have a connection with your parents? Do you have a connection with your close friends? It's like, well, yeah, of course I have a connection with my close friends. It's like, all right, so then you might say something instead like, I feel comfortable among my friends, but yeah, I'm a little awkward when it comes to dealing with people that I don't know very well. That's all right. Everybody is like that, you know? Or like, I'll never be able to run a marathon. That's a really negative, like, I can't statement versus like a reframed, very positive, I can statement, which is something like, well, I could start training for a 10K, start training for 6 miles and see how it goes. Start building upon that, right? Because chances are you couldn't run a mile at one point, but I know you can do that right now, you know? So I do have another video for you. There's gonna be a lot of videos in this class. I got a lot of really fun motivational videos, but here is one of my I would say this is my favorite video on the internet. Of all videos that exist on the entire internet, this is probably my favorite. So this is a graduation speech. Actually, it's a commencement speech by a guy named David Foster Wallace. He wrote a book called Infinite Jest. And this is an incredibly inspiring video, in my opinion, at least. And so this is someone took his speech. Here's the original video here, him giving that speech. But someone took that speech, they cut it down to certain like little pieces, and then they filmed this fun little short video to kind of go with it. But here we go. I wanna show this to you guys. My favorite video.
There are these two young fish swimming along, and they happen to meet an older fish swimming the other way, who nods at them and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" And the two young fish swim on for a bit, and then eventually one of them looks over at the other and goes, "What the hell is water?" The point of the fish story is merely that the most obvious, important realities are often the ones that are hardest to see and talk about. Stated as an English sentence, of course, this is just a banal platitude. But the fact is that in the day-to-day trenches of adult existence, banal platitudes can have a life or death importance. The plain fact is that you graduating seniors do not yet have any clue what day in, day out really means. There happen to be whole, large parts of adult American life that nobody talks about in commencement speeches. One such part involves boredom, routine, and petty frustration. The parents and older folks here will know all too well what I'm talking about. By way of example, let's say it's an average adult day, and you get up in the morning, go to your challenging white-collar college graduate job, and you work hard for 8 or 10 hours, and at the end of the day you're tired and somewhat stressed, and all you want is to go home and have a good supper and maybe unwind for an hour and then hit the sack early, because of course you have to get up the next day and do it all again. But then you remember there's no food at home. You haven't had time to shop this week because of your challenging job. And so now after work you have to get in your car and drive to the supermarket. It's the end of a work day and the traffic is apt to be very bad. So getting to the store takes way longer than it should. And when you finally get there, the supermarket is very crowded, because of course it's the time of day when all the other people with jobs also try to squeeze in some grocery shopping. But you can't just get in and quickly out. You have to wander all over the huge, overlit store's confusing aisles to find the stuff you want. And you have to maneuver your junky cart through all these other tired, hurried people with carts, etc., cutting stuff out because it's a long ceremony. And eventually, you get all your supper supplies, except now it turns out there aren't enough checkout lanes open, even though it's the end of the day rush. So the checkout line is incredibly long, which is stupid and infuriating, but you can't take your frustration out on the frantic lady working the register, who is overworked at a job whose daily tedium and meaninglessness surpasses the imagination of any of us here at a prestigious college. But anyway, you finally get to the checkout line's front, and you pay for your food, and get told to have a nice day in a voice that is the absolute voice of death. And then you have to take your creepy, flimsy plastic bags of groceries in your cart with the one crazy wheel that pulls maddeningly to the left, all the way out through the crowded, bumpy, littery parking lot And then you have to drive all the way home through slow, heavy, SUV-intensive rush hour traffic, etc., etc. Everyone here has done this, of course, but it hasn't yet been part of you graduates' actual life routine, day after week, after month, after year. But it will be. And many more dreary, annoying, seemingly meaningless routines besides. But that is not the point. The point is that petty, frustrating crap like this is exactly where the work of choosing is going to come in. Because the traffic jams and crowded aisles and long checkout lines give me time to think. And if I don't make a conscious decision about how to think and what to pay attention to, I'm going to be pissed and miserable every time I have to shop. Because my natural default setting is the certainty that situations like this are really all about me. About my hungriness and my fatigue and my desire to just get home. And it's going to seem for all the world like everybody else is just in my way. And who are all these people in my way? And look at how repulsive most of them are, and how stupid and cow-like and dead-eyed and non-human they seem in the checkout line. Or at how annoying and rude it is that people are talking loudly on cell phones in the middle of the line. And look at how deeply, personally unfair this is. If I choose to think this way in the store and on the freeway, fine. Lots of us do. Except thinking this way tends to be so easy and automatic that it doesn't have to be a choice. It is my natural default setting. It's the automatic way that I experience the boring, frustrating, crowded parts of adult life when I'm operating on the automatic, unconscious belief that I am the center of the world and that my immediate needs and feelings are what should determine the world's priorities. The thing is that, of course, there are totally different ways to think about these kinds of situations. In this traffic, all these vehicles stuck and idling in my way, it's not impossible that some of these people in SUVs have been in horrible auto accidents in the past and now find driving so terrifying that their therapist has all but ordered them to get a huge, heavy SUV so they can feel safe enough to drive. Or I can choose to force myself to consider the likelihood that everyone else in the supermarket's checkout line is just as bored and frustrated as I am, and that some of these people probably have much harder, more tedious or painful lives than I do. Again, please don't think I'm giving you moral advice, or that I'm saying you're supposed to think this way, or that anyone expects you to just automatically do it, because it's hard. It takes will and effort, and if you are like me, some days you won't be able to do it, or you just flat out won't want to. But most days, if you're aware enough to give yourself a choice, you can choose to look differently at this fat, dead-eyed, over-made-up lady who just screamed at her kid in the checkout line. Maybe she's not usually like this. Maybe she's been up 3 straight nights holding the hand of her husband who's dying of bone cancer. Or maybe this very lady is the low-wage clerk at the motor vehicles department who just yesterday helped your spouse resolve a horrific, infuriating red tape problem through some small act of bureaucratic kindness. Of course, none of this is likely, but it's also not impossible. It just depends what you want to consider. If you're automatically sure that you know what reality is and who and what is really important, if you want to operate on your default setting, then you, like me, probably won't consider possibilities that aren't annoying and miserable. But if you've really learned how to think, how to pay attention, then you will know you have other options. It will actually be within your power to experience a crowded, hot, slow, consumer hell-type situation as not only meaningful, but sacred, on fire with the same force that lit the stars. Love, fellowship, the mystical oneness of all things deep down. Not that that mystical stuff's necessarily true. The only thing that's capital T true is that you get to decide how you're going to try to see it. This, I submit, is the freedom of real education, of learning how to be well-adjusted. You get to consciously decide what has meaning and what doesn't. That is real freedom. That is being educated and understanding how to think. The alternative is unconsciousness, the default setting, the rat race, the constant gnawing sense of having had and lost some infinite thing. I know that this stuff probably doesn't sound fun and breezy or grandly inspirational the way a commencement speech is supposed to sound. What it is, as far as I can see, is the capital T truth with a whole lot of rhetorical niceties stripped away. You are, of course, free to think of it whatever you wish. But please don't just dismiss it as some finger-wagging Dr. Laura sermon. None of this stuff is really about morality or religion or dogma or big fancy questions of life after death. The capital T truth is about life before death. It is about the real value of a real education, which has almost nothing to do with knowledge and everything to do with simple awareness. Awareness of what is so real and essential, so hidden in plain sight all around us all the time, that we have to keep reminding ourselves over and over, this is water. This is water.
Okay. Friggin' love that video. My favorite quote in that is where he's talking about how, like, not all of these things are likely, but they're also not impossible. You know, you kind of get to choose how to sort of see it and stuff. So that's a really good example of like reframing, in my opinion, right? That's like, I think that like you can reframe things to be a very positive sort of optimistic outlook a lot of times, and that can be a really effective thing. And there are so many times where like I get real frustrated at the world and I'm just like, man, this world sucks. I remember like in the middle of COVID, I was like, during like the first like lockdown, I was so frustrated with the world and just depressed and angry. And then I was going for a walk, and this is such a weird like little thing to think of, but I saw that this park that I play Ultimate in, they had put the picnic tables in the middle of the baseball diamonds because they didn't want people. It was like, you know, there was clear postage on the park saying like, hey, this park is closed. Like nobody's allowed to even walk around. This is before we were even allowed to like walk around outside, you know, like this park is closed. You're not allowed to be there. And I had this thought of how I was like, that is a really clever solution to the problem of like not letting people use picnic tables and not letting people use, they solved two, you know, they killed two birds with one stone. And I remember like somewhat appreciating that some government employee had come up with this kind of weird solution, which was just to put these picnic tables in the middle of a baseball diamond, because that's not where they belong. And part of me just had this moment where I was like, good job, humanity. Like that's a clever solution to a weird problem to have. And that was like a small moment. And it's me, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be the most meaningful thing in the world, but like, I remember like that made me a little bit more positive. I was like, one positive thing to come out of this pandemic is, you know, this one government employee get to have a moment in the sun of clever solution problem, you know, to problems. And it sounds weird, but like that's a thing that to me it brightened my mood just a little bit that day. So that's reframing. Now, one thing that you also want to do as an effective coach, you do also want to make sure that you are establishing a clear focus for your client. Give your client goals to focus on. Two of the biggest ones you want to focus on, and we will talk more about this on the actual goal setting lesson, but performance goals are great. Learning goals are also really great. Performance goals, yeah, these are goals that focus on like appearing, you know, avoiding to appear incompetent at something, right? It's like establishing like a base skill, right? A performance goal might be something that's like, hey, let's just start coming to the gym frequently. You don't necessarily have to like, you know, hit the gym floor or anything. Maybe just get on the treadmill for a little bit, but like, let's start to get into the habit of just showing up. And then we can focus a little bit more on like learning goals where we do focus on like mastery. And it's like, hey, now that like this habit is well established, let's start seeing if we can get into something that's a little bit more intense, you know. It's like then we start focusing on, you know, lifting weights regularly. And then eventually it's like, all right, let's learn how to do a freaking barbell clean, you know, a little technical lift. Provide options to your client is always going to be big as well. When it comes to coaching, you're going to want to provide plenty of options, you know, seeing how that fits into their lifestyle. How do they feel about it? Ask questions about like what it is that they want to do. And then when it comes to asking questions, make sure that those questions are, you know, very appropriate to the client, right? Get to your clients like true motivations. This is where a lot of times like you want to ask your client why it is that they want to achieve what they want to achieve. Where powerful questions are actually getting to the heart of what your client's actual values are, what your client's actual like raw desires are, what their beliefs are, you know. Asking appropriate questions will help you. You know, if somebody says it's like, oh, hey, I want to lose weight, you know, they walk into the gym and it's like, okay, well, why do you want to lose weight? And it's like, well, my doctor said I need to lower my cholesterol and, you know, and I want to make sure that, you know, I can do that so that I don't end up like getting sick and then I'm around for my grandkids. And it's like, all right, so it sounds like the weight's actually not less important to you. What's important to you is improving your health and being around for your family, right? And it's like, yeah, that's what's actually important. And it's like, okay, well, let's focus on that. And then we kind of rewrite their goals into, you know, some version of that. So breaking the coaching process, now that we know all of like the pieces of stuff, we are going to focus on coaching in sort of 4 key steps here. First, you want to create a contract with your client. Okay. Make sure that you sit down with your client and establish like what your financial duties are, what the time commitment is, all the stuff we talked about in the beginning. Then we're going to discuss with them what their issues are and what their goals are so that we can get a very clear understanding of what it is they want to work on. Then we're going to summarize our understanding of that. We're going to repeat back to them our understanding of what it is that they want to work on, and then what they need to do in order to meet that, to meet those goals. So we are going to establish like a very clear plan to kind of solve these problems that they have. And then over the course of like several sessions or several weeks or whatever it happens to be, we are going to continue like coaching them and trying to meet those goals. So this 4-step process just begins with a contract, but you'll notice it is extremely similar to the 3-step problem-solving process that I will talk about later. Number 1, we need to identify the problem through an integrated fitness assessment, you know, determine what their posture is currently. Then we need to figure out what exercises are going to solve that problem, right? Gabriel, we were talking about this yesterday, right? You got a client with an anterior pelvic tilt. We know that that's tight hip flexors and weak glute muscles, right? So how do I solve that problem? Stretch the hip flexors, strengthen the glute muscles. Now we'll get their pelvis back to neutral, right? So that is sort of the 3-step process. And then step 3 is actually doing it. Implement that solution, right? So this is very similar to this, except that it starts with also like laying out a contract in the beginning. But that's what your coaching is sort of going to look like. Now, there is sort of what is called the Oscar model of change, which is going to kind of give you a very clear structure to focus on. These are basically like 5 little things that you want to make sure that you are doing with your client during your sessions. Okay. So the Oscar model of change sort of makes your coaching processes more effective. You just want to, in the same way that like SMART goals is an acronym to help you determine whether or not your goal is effective, you can ask yourself continually, is my coaching meeting the Oscar model of change? And what that means is that like you are establishing what your client's outcomes are, their situation, choices and consequences, actions, and review. So start with your client, laying out what their outcome is. What is their goal? The outcome is the destination of the goal. What's their desired long-term outcome? Ask them. They're like, what does he want to work on? Where do you want to be? I want to lose 100 pounds. Okay, great. Let's, you know, there's our outcome. Then let's figure out what their current starting situation is, right? What's their current state? And it's like, well, currently I weigh 280 pounds. It's like, okay, so we are currently at 280. We want to be, you know, our long-term outcome is to be 180, right? And then choices and consequences are the options. It's like, okay, so what do we need to do diet-wise? What do we need to do exercise-wise, right? What choices have you made? Or, you know, what choices do you want to make that will have the most positive benefits for reaching that outcome? Then we as the coach can help them clarify what actions. They're like, well, I want to be on a keto diet. You know, I've seen a lot of success on that. And then we break down like what a keto diet looks like, and maybe that's not what they want to do. So then we detail an actual plan, or if they do want to do keto, great, let's lay it out. Let's see, like, what does a keto meal plan actually look like? What are they going to do? How are they going to do it? With whom? You know, with you, right? And then review it all. Make sure they're on track. Always continually check in with your client, review their progress, and see how it's going. Now, all of that's going to be really good. One other thing you want to know about your clients that will make your coaching much more effective is what their learning style is. Okay. So this is where, if we're breaking it down, there are a bunch of different learners out there, different ways that some people are going to absorb things. You know, everybody in this call is probably much more of a like a physical learner. You know, that's probably what drew you to personal training school. Me, I tend to be a physical learner as well. And I also tend to be very much an auditory learner. So I absorb things by hearing them. Well, there's also a sort of more approach about like how people sort of think about things as well. And that's where Kolb's learning styles kind of come in. So sometimes we'll do assessments. We're going to look at this tomorrow. We'll talk about doing a client screening and a client assessment. And we're going to use that to determine what our clients' learning styles are. But to talk about these learning styles, you'll have some people who are what are called like a diverging learning style. These are people who learn by feeling and watching. So they benefit from like a lot of brainstorming sessions because like they like to feel things and like think about things. And then what's really important with a diverging client is to make sure that you have really strong rapport. They need to feel like they trust you. Assimilating clients, these are people who learn by like watching and thinking, tend to be a little bit more cerebral. So they benefit from like understanding the concepts. So giving them like a very technical explanation is a really good way to keep them on task. Converging clients are people who learn by like doing and thinking. This is like people who love like a good technical explanation followed by a demonstration. So we're going to do this, and then have them actually do it, right? Converging clients, chances are you guys are probably very converging. Again, these are the people who tend to, you know, sort of show up here at personal training school, you know, they want to hear it and then they want to do it. And then lastly, accommodating, people who learn by like doing and feeling, right? These are people who like benefit from like doing specific things and also having like a high level of rapport, right? So like, again, jumping in head first and trying things, that's an accommodating person. And then there's also like multiple intelligences out there. Like I said, there's linguistic learners, there's spatial learners, mathematical learners. You know, some people will totally just break things down. They're a number person. Some people are interpersonal where they relate to others. Some people are intrapersonal where they relate to themselves really well. All of those are very effective, you know, different people that we're going to end up coaching, and we need to be able to analyze that. And that's why tomorrow we're going to talk about the coaching relationship and how it starts with effective screenings, effective assessments, learning about what your client looks like. Now, obviously, there are some issues that you're going to run into that we'll be talking about. Sometimes it's ambivalence. Sometimes your client, you know, loses motivation. That can be an issue that you run into, and we'll talk about like how to build that motivation. Sometimes it'll be inconsistent. You know, sometimes people cannot or will not just, you know, commit to change. How do you overcome that? That's going to be, again, where our role kind of comes in. Sometimes people just aren't very good at self-reflecting. This is where a lot of times like journaling can become really handy. Or sometimes they just aren't committed. They just don't have like, they have other things that are kind of pulling them in different directions. And those different directions are keeping them from meeting their goals. And so we got to be able to figure out a way to steer them back onto task. And again, we need to be able to identify whether or not our client is doing these things. And that is where tomorrow's lesson is going to come in. So we're going to get into the sort of mental assessment side of things so we can learn about what our client sort of thinks, or how our client thinks, how they feel, you know, and stuff like that. And that's what a coach does, and that's where we're headed over the next 8 days, guys. Got some more fun videos to show you guys along the way. I would think that this is a very motivating class. If you guys are, you know, like, Bay, you're almost at the end of your journey here. This is your final mod in the core. You know, we want to push you through and get you motivated to get you out in there in the world and opening your gym, you know?
Yeah, you betcha. Excited.
You know, everybody's a little bit different. Everybody's got different goals. So let's build that motivation.
Most definitely. Well, you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Heck yeah.